to the Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. This platform is all about helping you find breakthroughs in your life. True testimonies of breakthrough is what this podcast is all about. So I bring incredible people on here who have incredible stories of breakthrough. Today we have the powerful Chris Kenny with us. And Chris, like it says below your name right there, the 3 life questions. You've crafted and found 3 essential life questions that everybody needs to ask themselves. What are these 3 life questions?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The 3 questions are: first, am I living authentically from my true self? Am I giving and receiving unconditional love? And am I leaving the world a little better?
So living authentically, giving and receiving unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
What was number 3 again?
Am I leaving the world a little better? Am I having a positive impact?
I love that. So these 3 questions: living authentically for who you are,
Mm-hmm.
giving and receiving unconditional love to yourself and to other people and receiving that from other people,
Yeah.
and leaving the world a little bit better. Why are these the 3 most powerful life questions we can ask ourselves?
They really derive from a book with a bit of a morbid title. It was called On Death and Dying. It was a famous study by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she did a worldwide study of individuals who were suffering from a terminal illness. You know, they knew they were going to be leaving this world in some kind of foreseeable time frame. And it's from that book that you and I have heard about what are known as the 5 stages of grief. So that study brought us the 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Mm-hmm. But my take, I had to read that book in high school, and I'm no longer the young man that I was back then. But so
it's a heavy read for high school.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And anyway, the stories in that book kept turning over in my brain for a long time. And I came to the conclusion that no matter what, you won't find this in the book directly, but my interpretation was that it didn't matter what the person's gender was, their socioeconomic status, their cultural upbringing, where they lived in the world, and whether or not they had any kind of faith or religious conviction of any sort. It seemed to me that the individuals in that book, as they were looking back on their lives, were asking themselves some form of those 3 questions in order to help them put their lives into perspective. And so what I figure is, if we can answer yes to those 3 questions, if we can live intentionally to answer yes to those 3 questions every day, then chances are pretty good that when we get to the end of our journey here, we're going to be able to look back on our lives and feel a sense of fulfillment. And so that's really the origins of the questions come from that study. But they're sort of my own interpretation of how people were trying to put their lives into perspective. And I just want to get people to be thinking about those and living intentionally with those questions in mind every day, so that you really don't wind up at the end of your life with any deep regrets.
Man, that's really good. That's really, really good, because, you know, we can hear these questions, but diving into how do we apply these questions every day, that's much deeper and a much more difficult thing to do, and a much more living intentionally thing to be able to do. So I want to ask that question later on, actually. Sure. How do we apply these questions on a daily basis? But first, I want to learn a little bit more about yourself and about your journey. So this is the Unstuck movement, right? We created this platform because I love finding out how people get unstuck from difficult places in their lives. The Unstuck movement, right? We have to have movement, positive movement forward if we're going to get unstuck from anything physical, emotional, mental, whatever it might be. Connected Leaders Academy is the sponsor for this podcast. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So Chris Kenny today on the show is an executive coach with over 35 years of experience as a business lawyer, entrepreneur, and strategic planning consultant, helping CEOs use business as a force for good. He specializes in guiding clients to discover their unique why operating system for personal and professional fulfillment. Now, of course, you're all about helping others, but in order to help others, you had to have helped yourself along the way, Chris. So I want to know for you, how did you learn throughout your journey how to live authentically for yourself, not for who you thought other people wanted you to be?
Yeah, that was a long road, honestly. I am now 60 years old, and I'm feeling like I am finally moving into a place of much greater authenticity than anything up until now, to be honest with you. I look at the three things that you have on your with your logo, lead, impact, and transform. And I think this notion of transformation is an interior journey that you need to go on. And I think for years and years, I was looking to external signs of either validation or approval or whatever it is. And, without getting too deep into the psychological parts of it, my journey was, went to college on the East Coast, and found myself in a job immediately after college that I really, it just didn't fit me. And I had this nagging feeling that it wasn't right. So I moved back to the Midwest, which is where my family lived at the time, worked there for a while, then went back to the East Coast for law school, got a job working for a major international law firm in Chicago. And these big law firms are the sorts of things where you can get pigeonholed very quickly. And that happened to me. For some reason, I had this twisted interest in securities law. And the next thing I knew, my office was next to the partner for the global securities law practice for this firm, who walked in one day and he said, "Mr. Kenny, you have what it takes to be a partner in this firm. You are my project." And which was, flattering, except I didn't want to be his project. And I really didn't want to stay doing securities law. Anyway, I practiced law there for a couple of years, and then for a firm in Kansas City. And the whole time I had this nagging sense that it wasn't really what I wanted. And that sort of nagging sense sort of followed me for various jobs and things that I've done. I did a startup. I ran a family business and helped sell that. And then I did strategic planning work. And all the while, these three questions were sort of lurking in the back of my brain. And I came to a place where I ended up having the good fortune of connecting with Dr. Gary Sanchez, who lives here in Albuquerque, which is where I live now. And Gary's the founder of the Why Institute. And Gary helped me discover my why. And the whole thing with a why is, what are the ththings that really motivate you? What gets underneath, all the behavioral stuff like DISC or Myers-Briggs or any of those other behavioral attributes. So there's a layer beneath that, which is really about what motivates you, sort of limbic brain stuff. And for me, what Gary helped me see was that my why, what really motivates me, is to make things clear for myself and for other people. And how I like to do that is by helping people solve complex problems. And what people can count on me for is I'm not going to give you some kind of cookie cutter answer. I'm going to go deep with you. And so those are the things that really motivate me. And as these three questions I finally came to realize that I needed to stop doing stuff because other people told me I would be good at it. I needed to start bringing to the world, the thing that I cared the most about, and it really was around these three questions. So it's been a long journey, a lot of introspection. I don't mind sharing with you or your audience that I have suffered with bouts of depression in my life, and I think a lot of that came from this disconnect between what I really felt my gifts were and what I really ought to be doing versus what I was doing because people said, "Oh, you'd be great at this," kind of thing. And I don't know if that'll resonate with many other folks in your audience, but all I can speak to is sort of my own experience, my own journey to arrive here. So a lot of introspection, and again, I feel like now I'm stepping much closer to my own authentic self.
I love that. And, just talking about this, I mean, that's something I would venture to guess that most people who chose a job because it was the money or it was what people in your family wanted you to do, or you just thought that's what I should be doing because that fits me well into the world, or whatever it might be, right? Just choosing a job, choosing a career to fit in. If you decide and you finally try to break away from that, you really find yourself on a journey of self-discovery. And like you said, finding yourself in places of depression during that journey, I think are, at least for me, expected, because you realize, oh, I spent so much time doing something that I wasn't meant to do. You may have been good at the thing that you were doing, but it might not have been the thing you were supposed to be doing. And now you're in this journey of trying to figure it out, and figuring it out can really put you in the wilderness for quite a long time as you go through that journey. Right. So what you're saying, I think many people, many more than above average, high above, 50% of people could probably relate to that situation of trying to figure that out. Because when you get so convicted that you have to figure out exactly what it is am I supposed to be doing, living from your purpose or your higher self or whatever you want to say, that sends you down a road that can be a long, confusing and challenging road.
Yeah.
So,
No question. And certainly in our Western culture, and again, speaking from what I know, which is sort of the male perspective, right? Admitting that you aren't in the right place, or you don't feel good about it, or whatever, even admitting it to yourself or to anyone else, there's a lot of vulnerability there, and that's not an easy thing to do, for sure.
Yeah, what caused for you, do you think, that point in your life where you were like finally ready to admit it? Because you may admit it to yourself at one point in time, but then you've got to be ready to admit it to other people so they can help you move forward. What was the breaking point for you that was like, I don't care what I have to do, I'm gonna do this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think what precipitated me finally, deciding, okay, I'm gonna find a way to bring these three questions out into the universe, and whatever value people derive from hearing those and applying them, I'm going to let the chips fall where they may, because this is just, I have to do this. What precipitated me finally doing that was I had worked for several years as a strategic planning consultant and a business coach with a good friend and mentor of mine we were based in Albuquerque. And a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, he and his wife decided to retire and move to Arizona. And it was at that point where I really could either continue down the path that I was on my own, or I could finally, step into bringing these three questions. And I just decided, so it was a bit circumstantial. I mean, I just finally decided, okay, the universe is telling me that this is the time when I need to move forward with this. So that's really what finally led me to make this decision.
And that decision's it's such a huge one, man. It's such a huge one because obviously you've had this concept with you for a while.
Mm-hmm.
but now you're like, okay, I'm going to step out in faith and just do it because I know it's what I'm supposed to do. And if these questions have helped you, then you know they're going to help other people. And I don't know, Chris, I truly believe like the only way I found my path was because I went across a bunch of different paths of like, oh, here's what people need. When I first left my radio broadcasting career, I went into digital marketing and ran my own digital marketing company for 6.5 years because that's what people needed. Right. I knew people needed that and I knew how to do it. Was it something that I liked to do? Not necessarily. I liked it. I didn't love it. And the more I did it, the more I didn't like it anymore. And so I was like, man, that's something that works for people and it works for me, but I'm not supposed to be doing this. And I just knew that. And so just like you heading off into the world of coaching, it's a longer journey. It's a more challenging journey of building up who I am, who I'm speaking to. And I think let me ask you this question, because this is what I noticed in a coaching realm. A lot of limiting beliefs pop up. Who am I worthy enough to tell other people or to coach other people in how to improve their life? And so a lot of roadblocks pop up there. Was that a challenge for you?
Yes. In a word. Yes. And what I've noticed, I think, is, and I've sort of put this together in a pithy kind of acronym. I use the acronym FLAB, FLAB, and we got to get rid of the flab because that's the thing that's what gets in our way. And what FLAB stands for are fears, labels, attachments, and beliefs. Mm-hmm. So we often view ourselves through the lens of our fears, labels, attachments, and beliefs. And attachments, by the way, means without this thing or this position, this accomplishment, I cannot be happy. I have to have X in order to be happy. That's what an attachment is. But anyway, so we view ourselves through our flab often. And so, yeah, absolutely. Every one of those. And those are really, in my estimation, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but, I feel like those are really the genesis of what I'll call the false self, the ego self, the self that we sort of believe that we are, but that we have sort of adopted these things through our upbringing, our culture, whatever, and they're generally all subconscious. And so part of what I've tried to do for myself, and look, I've had a talk therapist for, I've got people that I've talked to about a lot of this stuff. But what I try to do in my coaching practice is to help my clients see their own flab and identify it and recognize it. Because once you see it, right, then you can make a conscious decision about whether it serves you well or not. Not all beliefs are bad. Not all labels are bad. It's just a question of are they forming a roadblock for you? And if they are, chances are you're not even aware of it at a conscious level. And so in the coaching realm, that's part of what I try to help my clients see, so that they can deal with those things more constructively and create strategies for moving beyond them.
I love that, man. So speaking of moving beyond them, I want to go into how do we apply these 3 life questions to our life on a practical basis. So before we do that, we're going to jump into the sponsor real quick, 60 seconds to shout the sponsor. When we come back, you talked about the 3 life questions, living authentically, giving and receiving unconditional love, and leaving the world a little bit better because we were there. How do we apply these 3 things practically to our life on a daily basis? We're going to cover that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, Move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line. And of course, grow your circle and your network like never before. This is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So the 3 life questions, Chris: how do we live authentically? How do we give and receive unconditional love? And how do we leave the world a little bit better? What is your strategy for actually applying these into our life on a daily basis?
Yeah, great question. And it's really where the rubber hits the road, right? So first, I think I'll tell you what I do. Like, I try to start my day thinking about those 3 questions and asking myself exactly what you asked me. How, it's really, how can I live authentically today from my true self? How can I give and receive unconditional love? And that word unconditional there is really important. I sort of have looked back in horror at my own manner of loving other people in my life, and have realized that much of it was conditional. I'll love you if you love me, and or whatever it might be. I mean, anyway, again, that gets into psychology beyond this, beyond my ability to deal with it, but it is an important word. And then, how can I make life a little bit better? So back to your question. So one is to start the day, being intentional about how I'm going to live today. I also, do some journaling, and I try to conclude my day sort of with a reflective piece. How did I do? Knowing full well that most days I will fall short. And one needs to be kind. This is work. It was another acronym. I'm sorry if I'm throwing too many things out at once, but work for me in this realm, like living into these 3 questions to be able to answer yes to them, is work. And for me, work is, the W stands for willing. You need to be willing to look inside, take a hard look at what really motivates you. What are your values? Are you being true to your deepest self? And you alluded to this earlier, Rob, when you talked about, being in digital marketing, and there was this, kind of nagging sense that it wasn't quite right. And, it's, that's that still small voice inside all of us. Well, you got to be willing to spend a little time listening for that voice. So that's one way. Anyway, that's the W in work. The O is open. You need to be open to following this path, listening. You got to be open to perhaps to things that some trusted friends or advisors are willing to share with you, to enable you to see yourself perhaps in a different light. The R for in work here is rigorous. You need to be, don't give up on it. The answer may not come to you in a blinding flash of light. It's work. You got to stick with it. You got to continue to look inside. And then the K is kind, which is what I really wanted to get to. You need to be kind to yourself. Admitting that you are not particularly happy with where you are, that can be a tough pill to swallow. Mm-hmm. And as you go through this work, you're gonna get frustrated, because it's like, well, why can't I just figure it out, or whatever? It's all part of the journey. I mean, we all know stories that, the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey stuff. I mean, this is what this is about. And you talked about it earlier, Rob, when you said, it can take you to some dark places sometimes, which is unfortunate. I don't know of another method than just going on the journey. So you got to be willing to do the work. Is one essential component. How do you give and receive unconditional love? I don't know. And somebody has said to me before, look, there's no way I can control whether someone gives me unconditional love. And that may be true to a certain degree. But if you're willing to examine the conditions you place on your own willingness to be kind to other people, you might find that you are actually you are in control of whether you establish conditions or not, and how can you slowly remove some of those conditions. Because I guarantee you this much: if you give it, the way the universe works is it will come back to you. It may not come back to you from this particular person in this particular setting, but it has to come back to you. Mm-hmm. It's just a universal law, right? So all you can do is really, and then I'll say this much. I mean, to sort of veer towards a spiritual side. I mean, I come from a belief that the fact that I am alive, the fact that the breath of life was breathed into me, means that I received a gift of unconditional love from the very start, from the very outset, right? So I need to be open to that. I need to be receptive to that kind of idea. And it just having that sense makes me realize that, look, I can be a conduit. That's really what I want to be. I want to be a conduit for the life energy that flows through me and into the world, and it's all around me. So how can I be a conduit, and instead of stopping that flow from happening? And then the final one, look, impacting the world, making the world a little better. I put the word little in that third question for a reason. You don't have to solve world hunger in order to have a positive impact in the world. And in fact, when I looked at the stories from On Death and Dying, it wasn't about accomplishments or major things. It was about improving the lives of other people in small ways. And so to answer your question, how can you today do something small? I'm reminded of the Boy Scout motto that I learned when I was a kid, do a good turn daily. Look, make the clerk at the grocery store smile. That's it. Like, it doesn't have to be big stuff. You just gotta be intentional about leaving the world a little bit better. I mean, people who are into environmental stuff, do something to clean up a little bit. It's picking up a piece of paper on the ground. I mean, we're not talking about huge things here. It's about making a little difference in the lives of other people or in our planet more generally every day. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and as far as like the living intentional, it also goes to so when we're like when we're unconscious, when we're like living our day out of like the programs we've been running on for years that aren't serving us in any way, we're not paying any attention to humanity around us. We're all wrapped up in us, right? So, like you said, making somebody smile. Those are such simple things, and I think we've all heard them so many times. But when you hear something so many times, either somebody's lying to you to try to get you to believe a lie, or it's a cliche because it's true and it's been true forever. And so I was just at the grocery store today, and the lady behind the counter I could tell, having a really bad day. And I asked her how she was doing, and she, gave me the I'm fine kind of thing. But I just intentionally made sure I made a lot of eye contact with her. I made sure I smiled at her. I made sure I told her, thank you. I really appreciate your help, because she helped me to get a one of the store cards so I can have bonus points at the gas pump when I get gas. But just like those little things, and I could tell when I left, she gave me eye contact, smiled back, said thank you. And I could tell that I made her feel a little bit better because I was intentional with her being in front of me. And it's like that simple. It's like acknowledging humanity. And I think that a lot of the times we don't, when we're caught up in ourselves, we don't acknowledge humanity because we're so busy just dealing with our own crap. And if we're going to be of service to other people, we can't also be focusing on us and worrying about why do I feel so horrible or whatever it might be, right? So it's so simple, man. It's really so simple, but acknowledging that we're all together in this.
Yep.
That we're all connected.
I forget who said it. Somebody said, I think it's the definition of humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, and there it is, right? I mean, it's so, you know, those are some, I mean, and I don't know the answer, the direct answer to your question about, you know, how do you do this every day? Because everybody's different, right? Or each of us has our own. But I do feel that being intentional, like having these questions in front of you at the start of every day, and asking the very question you asked me, how can I do this today? You can come up with your own answers, right? Doing so, you know, being able to answer yes to those questions every day is going to lead to such a deeper sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And this is the gift, it seems to me, that the individuals, the people dying, you know, facing death in that study, to me, that's the great gift that, you know, they gave us the 5 stages of grief, you know, or Kubler-Ross did. Okay, that was great. And it's good to understand that. But, you know, what I took away from that was a different type of gift, because it seems to me that the people who were in that book, the gift they gave us was the gift of how to put your life, you know, into perspective. And you need not, and in fact ought not, to wait until the end to answer, you know, to examine those questions. Because if you do it now, right, your chances, as I said earlier, when you get to the end, your chances go way up.
Yeah, to be living from them today and not while you're about to die. That's a good.
Exactly. So, and look, let me throw out another couple of. So this comes from a friend and fellow consultant, Lanny Goodman, who also happens to be here in Albuquerque. I met Lanny. He was featured in Inc. magazine years and years ago, and he had these 4 entrepreneurial questions that so for people in leadership roles, people who own businesses, you know, his 4 questions I thought were very useful. The first one was, what do I, the business owner, need and want in life? Second, how can my business help me accomplish those things? The third, what would such a business need to look like? And finally, how do we get it to look like that? And so for Lanny, you know, it becomes a business design issue. Let's design a company that gives the business owner, the person who's put up all their time, energy, effort, and money, build a business that enables that person to really get what they need and want most in life. And what I sort of bring to those 4 questions in my mind is the answer to the first one, beyond the normal material stuff, right? I mean, the business does have to make money. You know, you want to feed your family, you want to send your kids to a good school. To me, you know, all of those things are sort of table stakes, right? There's no reason to do any of that unless the business is going to be profitable, etc. But what my 3 questions I feel brings to Lanny's design thing is, I really think the answer to question 1 for most of us on the planet is to be able to answer yes to the 3 questions that I posed, right? What do you really want in life? Well, what I can tell you that when you get to the end of your life, you're going to want to be able to answer yes to the 3 questions that I threw out there. So as a business owner, how can you design a business that helps you answer yes to the 3 life questions? In addition to all of the things the business does, right? Making money and
yeah, because on your deathbed, you're not going to be like, they're going to be like, what mattered the most? And you're like, oh, my business profited $2 million this year, you know, as you're about to die. And if that is what you're saying as you're about to die, I don't know, man. Your life just seems like it was geared in the wrong direction. And I love the way that you've put that, because everything professional comes back to personal, and we can't get our professional life better until we get our personal life better. And we love to, when I say we, just people in general, I think especially men, though, people who are striving and driving for more in their life, we want to disconnect business from our personal life, because if business is going well, then, oh, everything's fine. I just had a conversation last week on the podcast with a guy who he was killing it in business. They were making 8 figures, and his personal life was falling apart. It was a complete disaster, right? And you hear this story so many times, right? And so you have to wake up and be like, wait a minute, I've got to get the personal right, or the professional, no matter how good it is, it's going to fall apart at some point in time. You can't live your life on this professional end just thinking that's it, because it's the personal stuff that at the end of our lives, like you were saying, when it comes down to somebody at the end of their life, they talk about their relationships. They talk about the closeness they have with people, the love they have with people, for people, and from others. That's what really matters at the end of the day, man. And Chris, I love that, because those 3 life questions bring such a powerful and meaningful significance to those 4 entrepreneurial, business-minded questions. And I think that's when I hear what I hear you saying is that is the bond that ties those things together. I think that's really great, man. So if they want to find out more about that and the 3 life questions, they go to the 3lifequestions.com. What do they do once they get to the site?
Well, I am, once they get to the site, there's a place for them to contact me if they would like to have a one-on-one conversation. I'm happy to do that. I'm also a Why Institute coach. So one of the things, you had asked me about that's on the website too is, helping people discover their own why, their why, how, and what, because I find that it really helps move the conversation along much more quickly when I am aware and the person is aware of what really motivates them. And so that's probably the best way to reach me is via the website. There's a contact me form. I'd love to engage in conversations with people about this. I think my gift, going back to my own why about, clarify, make sense, and mastery is I'm able to help people see themselves in a new light, in a different light. Not by, this is where I'm more of a coach, is if I feel like my job is to reflect things back to people, but perhaps by asking questions that get them to sort of reframe what it is that they're after and what they're trying to do. I do believe that all of this, whether it's designing your business or designing your life or bringing those 2 together, I think it is around a design issue, but that only happens when you are willing to do the work thing that I talked about, where you're willing to go on this journey. And sometimes it's a little rough, but I view myself sort of as a guide to help people with this. There's a great book on the first question about living authentically. There was a great book by a woman named Martha Beck, and it's called The Way of Integrity. And what she does, I think, brilliantly in that book is she uses Dante's Divine Comedy as a mechanism for helping people navigate their own way to living more authentically. And just as Dante had, Virgil for the guide through the Inferno, I feel that that's kind of the role that I play with my clients is, I'm there to be a guide, a helpful guide that challenges people, but does so, with kindness. And look, kindness can sometimes come across as pretty harsh when somebody, is not seeing something or is unwilling to really, go the distance. Your job's got to be to sort of sometimes slap people upside the head and get them to wake up. So I do both of those things, I guess.
What a great way of looking at that. Kindness. Sometimes kindness is kindly slapping somebody up across the head to help wake them up, right? That's really good, man, because that is really, really true. And if we are a true friend of people, if we unconditionally love people, then we're going to confront them with questions that they may be avoiding, that they don't want to answer, but are necessary to avoid. But approach those questions with kindness, right?
Correct.
That's really good. Thank you, Chris. That was really, really powerful, man. And I need to let that soak in and embrace that. Because there's a few friends in my life that I need to be kindly smacking them, and myself. And we should have friends that do it to us, and we should be doing it to others for sure. Really good stuff. They can check out the 3lifequestions.com. Anything else before we wrap this thing up?
No, I've just really appreciated this conversation, Rob. Thank you very much. And again, I look at, lead, impact, transform. I think the transformation has to happen in order for you to lead effectively and have a positive impact. And that transformation is really about you as opposed to, other people. I think when you see yourself and your role in the world more clearly, you can lead from a place of authenticity. And that's when people will want to follow you. People want authentic leaders who are looking to make a positive difference in the world. And so I think you're onto something really, really important, not only with this podcast, but with the other work that you do.
Thanks, Chris. That means so much to me, man. That's why we got connected. That's why we're friends. It makes a lot of sense, right? On the same journey, and with the same sort of vision for what we want for our lives and for the lives of others. I want to thank you, sir, for being an impactful voice on the Unstuck movement.